So I just watched this documentary called My Kid Could Paint That, and it was about this young girl who was 4 years old, I think, maybe 5, called Marla, and she was becoming quite a renowned artist because of these abstract paintings that seemed well above her age group, and she was being called a child prodigy. This made headlines all around the world. I actually remember when it was in the headlines. And this documentary was following her and mostly her parents, because of course a 4-year-old is not, particularly talkative. So it was really following her mum and dad. The documentary is interesting because it gets in fairly early in their journey, and so you see them change or see their perspective change as they get more and more famous. And especially the mother is interesting because she can kind of see early on that this might not be a very good thing. This might be putting her daughter or the health of her family at risk, but she also is scared of making the wrong choice and withholding these opportunities for her daughter. So I found her quite interesting. The documentary starts by asking this question of, is the modern art world just a sham? Is it all just bullshit for rich people to make more money? And in particular, it asks these questions about abstract art, because all of these paintings are abstract. And it's kind of asking, what are people seeing in these? How can you even really properly evaluate whether something is good or not if it's just abstract? How can one child's painting be world-class art and another's just be, fridge-worthy? What's interesting is the documentary takes a dramatic shift away from this about halfway through, after a 60-minute program comes out with skepticism or even an accusation that maybe her father was doing these paintings or even instructing her on how to do the paintings or adapting them somehow and making them more professional looking. And this accusation really changes the second half of the documentary. They follow the anger and the frustration of their parents of being accused this. The documentary follows them trying to prove that it is in fact Marla making these paintings. The problem is that Marla is camera shy and she doesn't like to make paintings in front of a camera. So they try and surreptitiously record her filming paintings, and they get a couple of videos of her making paintings, but those paintings don't seem to be as good a quality as the other paintings that are selling for tens of thousands of dollars. And this is where the documentary maker kind of inserts himself into the narrative, and he is making an editorial decision of comparing these past paintings with these ones that have proof. And just by placing them next to each other, he's implying that they're not as high a quality, and that he himself admits to becoming skeptical of the father and his involvement in the paintings, and that ultimately he ends up not being sure. And the documentary ends in this really awkward place. It's pretty rare to have a documentary end in such an awkward place, because the parents then become quite guarded around this documentary maker. So the documentary interviews used to be this environment of, talking and conversing and this sort of standard documentary fare, but it turns into these really awkward, confronting conversations of accusation and defense and all of this. What I found most interesting, though, was that the documentary pretty much leaves its original starting point of these questions around the art world and around art itself, but inadvertently answers those questions by the documentary maker putting this comparison up between the paintings that there is proof that Marla made and the ones that there isn't any proof that are a higher quality. You can see immediately which one is better, even though they are both abstract art. One looks more childlike and one looks more refined and polished and professional and emotional. And so I found this just fascinating, that even though the documentary shifted so far away from its original starting point, it then answered its original question. The documentary maker's skepticism about these particular paintings ended up answering his skepticism about the abstract art in general. I also think there is this general theme across the whole documentary about the way observation inherently distorts things. So there's both the child, Marla, who is unable, for whatever reason, to paint in the impressive professional way that she is claimed to. She can't do that in front of a camera. She really struggles. She gets distracted or performance anxiety or whatever it is. She just can't do it if cameras are around, even the sort of surreptitious cameras. But then this ties into the way the parents and the adults around Marla act differently around these documentary cameras, and how us observing them, or having this observing camera in their lives, changes how they think and act and speak. And of course we see this in science all the time. I think there's like a proper actual term for it, where people act differently when they're being observed, and this causes all sorts of problems in science, and especially ethical questions of how can we actually see the truth of human behaviour while they ethically consent to being a part of a study, because that in itself can distort the study. I think that's an overarching theme of this documentary. I was relieved to see that Marla and her family have decided to basically stay out of the public eye since this time, and that seemed like the right choice.